Hi there, it's Andy, the Universal RN. Back again. Never stops, does it? Today we're going to talk about smoking. Uh, I had a very interesting visit with a patient of mine last week who smokes. And I was pretty frustrated when I realized just the utter lack of information that physicians give. And that's one of my things about physicians that I don't like. They can even be a good physician. And we talked about in one of the recent videos about the time that they have to talk to patients and, give them advice and education and all that. But it's just utterly shocking how much education they don't give people so that they can make more informed choices about what they're going to do. And smoking is one of those things that really kind of gets lost in the shuffle of education. We've heard so much about smoking. We've seen so much about smoking and advertising about how it's terrible and lung cancer and all that. But nobody ever talks about the fact that smoking does more than just to your lungs. I'm going to lift my dog up here. She's going to drive us crazy. It's not just a lung thing. That's the problem that I have, that physicians assume that the dangers of smoking are known to mankind now, and so nobody even gives it a second thought to, hey, maybe the patient, if they knew this part of smoking, maybe that'd be more motivating to quit. One thing you're going to learn about me is I don't smoke. I've never smoked. I came from two parents that did smoke, so I feel pretty fortunate that that's not a habit I picked up. But I'm not lecturing. None of these videos are going to be lectures of you're a bad person, you smoke, oh God, you're terrible. You're a person, grown person. You can do whatever you want. I mean, if smoking entertains you and make you happy, that's great. I don't care. The important thing I need to tell people is information. That's going to be my whole goal, obviously, in all these videos, is to give information. And all most people understand is that smoking has the ability to cause lung cancer, which of course it does. They don't know the rest of it, which is even a bigger part of smoking. And so I just want to give you education, and you do with it what you want. You can flush it down the toilet, I don't care. But I think it's important that people know that smoking does more than just affect the lungs. Way more than that. We've all heard the secondhand, smoke type thing, and so many studies now have been done about the true effects of living in a household with somebody who smokes. And what we've been finding out in recent years is secondhand smoke is almost kind of a misnomer. Yes, you're getting it secondhand. Yes, maybe you're not the person who smokes in the household and you're breathing in the smoke. But it almost implies, because it's secondhand, that the damage is going to be just a little bit less. And the reality is what they found with many, many studies and tests now is that non-smokers get almost the exact same effect as smokers in a household. And this is the kicker that people don't understand. This isn't just the spouse or the children or whatever. This is animals in the home. I mean, this is your dogs, your cats. Everybody's smoking with you, I guess, so to speak, if you're a smoker. And a lot of people don't understand that secondhand thing psychologically does stuff to some smokers. They literally, and my patient happened to be one of them. That's why it was so eye-opening when I was talking to him about it, and he was expressing, his interest in not smoking anymore, and so on and so forth. He literally did not understand, truly, even with all the news feeds and all the information out there, and I'm sure his doctor lecturing him and all that. He really did not understand, A, the amount of damage it was doing to him, and B, the amount of damage it was doing to everybody else in his home. As he said to me, he said, I really thought secondhand smoke, that sounded less harmful. Secondhand, not first, second. And so he granted he wanted to smoke, so he does what a lot of people does. He kind of made excuses of reasons he could smoke, and so he lessened the impact of what his doctors told him. But he said to me, and he honestly got tearful in the whole 9 yards while we were talking, because he didn't know. He's like, I really, truly did not know. me smoking, and he has a smaller house, in my smaller house, next to my wife, in front of the grandchildren that we babysit, and his 2 dogs. He said, I didn't realize that was like they were all smoking. And I said, yes, that's exactly what's happening. There's thousands of people, thousands of people who die every year from second-hand smoke. Because unfortunately, it's more like first-hand smoke. It's almost like they smoke themselves, so they get the garbage that goes along with it. Now, the problem is, why didn't any of my siblings have lung issues? Both my parents smoked. I don't know. Interestingly enough, neither one of my parents had issues from their smoking, and I'm not condoning it, but they didn't. So why does this 45-year-old get lung cancer and die a horrible death, and my own personal maternal grandmother lived to 94 and smokes a pack a day and doesn't exercise a day in her life, and so on and so forth, and doesn't seem to have any damage from smoking? I don't know. The problem is, when you play the game of, well, my whole family smokes and nobody ever died from lung cancer, you're playing Russian roulette. Just because people in your family didn't have this problem or that problem does not negate you from having that problem. And so many people get caught up in that, well, nobody else did. My sisters didn't, my brothers didn't, my parents didn't. So the likelihood of something happening to me is, minuscule. No, see, that's the crazy thing. That's just not true. Genetics plays a little role, but as we're finding also, environment and your own stress level and your own chemistry and all those things come into play about what happens to you physically when you smoke. And so you just like I said, you play Russian roulette. You just might be the one, unfortunately, that gets the trigger pulled on you, and there's a live bullet in there, and it gets you. How many times have you talked to a neighbor, a friend, a coworker who said, oh my gosh, my grandma has breast cancer, my grandma has lung cancer, whatever, and you say, oh, does it run in your family? No, we have no family history of it. Nobody's got cancer anywhere in my family. How the heck did she get this? Blah, blah, blah. You hear those stories all the time, and they happen all the time. The person who literally lives the healthy, good lifestyle comes down with an awful disease. And so it's just kind of a crapshoot, ladies and gentlemen, about what's going to happen. So don't play the Russian roulette thing where you're basing what you think may or may not happen on you on your family history. Your family history is only one part of it. You have so many other parts. How much sleep do you get? Are you exhausted all the time? Do you drink a lot of alcohol? Do you work 90 hours a week and you're stressed all the time? Do you have other physical issues going on? All those things factor in too. All those things factor in too about how much things can hurt you, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, smoking, whatever. All those things factor in. It's not just familial history. It's all of those things combined. So smoking itself, let's talk about that. So you smoke, or somebody who smokes, or what have you. Here's the deal about smoking people don't know. Smoking affects the veins and arteries in your body. And as hopefully you learned some point in school, in a science class, your veins and arteries are pretty important. If you didn't have them, you wouldn't be alive. It's one of those kind of things. Nicotine and the gunk and substances, in smoke help gunk up your veins and arteries. They help make your arteries and veins spasm. So your tube, this little tube of a vein, does this number, and so obviously when it's doing that number, blood flow is being affected. People have, particularly diabetics, by the way, if you're diabetic and smoke, that is just the most god-awful combination. Honest to God, you just couldn't do anything worse if you're diabetic than smoke. Because diabetes and smoking tend to compound the problems they each create. When you mix them together, they potentiate. They get those certain side effects or problems that they create in your body get way worse when you have those two things together. Diabetics suffer from a lot of neuropathy in their feet, which means they have nerve damage. and they have these weird, painful, odd sensations in their feet all the time. It's very annoying. It's very frustrating. And honestly, once it's there and the damage is done, except for, the right kind of med, if you're lucky, you can't really get rid of that or control that. Well, smoking also contributes to neuropathy. Smoking also damages the veins and the arteries that go down to your feet. So even though neuropathy is from nerves, smoking helps that sensation without involving the nerves. It involves the veins and arteries, and it clogs them up, and it makes them smaller, and so you don't get as much blood to your feet. And if you don't get as much blood to your feet, you don't get as much oxygen to your feet, and that's the problem. That's another problem with diabetics too, is they're already dealt the hand of all this vein and artery damage from excessive sugar in their body for years and years and years. They're dealt that hand. They have to deal with that. Then you take smoking, which does the same thing. It damages the arteries and veins, and you take these little tiny squiggly little nerves or veins and arteries that are going into your feet from a diabetic, and then you compound it with smoking, which does the same thing. So now you're making that smaller artery even smaller. You can see the problem. I mean, these people are miserable. Their feet hurt all the time. It doesn't matter how they sit, stand, walk, whatever meds they take. Their feet are just miserable all the time. And imagine that half of your life you need to be up and moving on your feet. So imagine what it's like to have that sensation of pain. So smoking affects your eyes. People don't think about those things. You have constant, it's almost like a forest fire is going on in front of your face all the time. So for people who suffer from dry eye, it just compounds that problem 100%. Some people who smoke heavily actually do outer damage to their eyes. They scratch their eyes. The smoke, their eyes never have any relief. They can't ever blink away, and that's why we blink. We blink to protect our eyes from stuff. They can't blink fast enough to keep that smoke from rubbing constantly on the outside of their eye. And so, now light smokers don't seem to have a lot of that problem. But medium to heavy smokers, like I said, you just can't blink fast enough to get rid of the smoke that's constantly rubbing on your eyes and damaging your eyes. Have you ever noticed that you can usually tell somebody who smokes by the skin on their face? Once again, it's like being around a forest fire all the time. It's very drying. People who smoke tend to have that mouth, the circumference thing around their mouth of the horrible, horrible, small, thin wrinkles. And a problem is when you're a non-smoker, you see it very easily. When you're a smoker, you don't even notice it because it happens so slowly and so insidiously over your smoking life that you don't pay attention to that happen, and then you just kind of think that's the natural aging process and so on and so forth. It most certainly is not the natural aging process. Most people don't get real wrinkled around their mouth and that real strange, it's almost like you picture the little kid drawing a sun and they draw the little rays out. That's the look. That's not a natural part of aging. That's not how most people don't age around their mouth like that. That's a smoking type thing. So, cardiac disease. Cardiac disease, some of it, the part that really damages your heart is when your heart's lacking oxygen. So you're literally putting your heart at risk. There are people that have died of heart attacks who really didn't have a pronounced background of cardiac disease. They had smoking. And the smoking finally did so much damage to their arteries and veins to their heart that they had that one spasm in an outside artery that wraps around the heart that supplies the heart with oxygen. It just takes that one spasm to have a heart attack. Smoking does that. Cardiac disease does that too, but smoking can do that all by itself without cardiac disease involved. So these are the things I just want to tell you. Smoking is not just lung. Smoking affects every vein and artery in your body. And, as we all know, your veins and arteries supply oxygen to every part of your body, including your brain. It does terrible damage in your feet. It can cause cardiac issues, and it does all kinds of skin damage that smokers don't realize how they look, because they're just, like I said, it happens so slowly. They're adjusted to what they look like, but other people look right at smokers and know they're smokers just from the roughness of their skin and the terrible wrinkling of their skin. So just something to think about, you know. Maybe you're a smoker, you didn't know some of this. It's not just your lungs. It's not just your lungs. You know, maybe your family all smoked like chimneys and, you know, nobody died of lung cancer, but every single one of your family members died of cardiac disease. Well, you know, heart disease. Well, maybe they died of it from smoking. You know, that's maybe their smoking was the root cause and not something else. You know, their diet or cholesterol, or cholesterol is a whole nother subject we'll get on one day. Whatever. Maybe your whole family literally died of cardiac disease that was related to smoking. So you guys out there who smoke, or you guys who need ammunition to talk to people who in your family who do smoke that you want to quit, just let them know. Smoking does more than just your lungs. Lung cancer is not the only repercussion of smoking. It affects your every cell and your entire body every day. And, you know, you keep smoking, these cells can't repair themselves, the damage can't be undone, it's done. So when you're thinking, you know, well, that's okay, nobody in my family died of this, you have no idea if anybody of your family died of that or not, because you're not looking at the other possibilities of what smoking could have caused to kill off your family member. So that's my video of today. Like I said, I'm not lecturing. You're grown up. If you want to smoke, you smoke. I'm just giving information that sometimes your doctors don't tell you. You know, doctors tend to just say, what do you want? Lung cancer? Quit smoking, for God's sake. Well, they need to tell the other stuff it does too, not just about lung cancer, because it does more of the other stuff than lung cancer. So now that you're a little bit more informed, you know, you have a better way to make a decision. And like I said, if you're a non-smoker trying to convince somebody, now you have a little ammunition you can talk about. So that's the video for today. Hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.